Might not stand, I can't see it. Firstly, my apologies for being late. I came from what I guess, given Shami's comments, will be viewed as a serial crime scene. Julian finished with a phrase, I wrote it down, I think this was right. He said, the people who know what they're talking about will not want to go ahead with it. Reminds me of Adlai Stevenson. There was once upon a time a very gushy woman who heard Adlai Stevenson speak, and the end of a very good speech, she said, Mr. Stevenson, I can't imagine any thinking person in the country won't vote for you. And he said, maybe, but we need a majority. and I'm afraid the same principle applies here. On that principle, Julian, we'll lose 600 to 10. Now, I don't want to make political points in this. The other morning, I was doing the Andrew Marr show, and after it, we had breakfast with a guest, Ed Miliband was one of the guests. And actually, to be fair to him, I think Miliband is trying to modernise his party in these terms. And he said, well, you know, we're interested in your views on the Snoopers Charter, as we've managed to brand the thing. He said, and I started talking about it, he said, oh, but you mean you want to take powers away that we've already got? And he hadn't realised that the problem starts, I missed the first discussion, so the problem starts back in pre-2001, when you either had to ask for the data if you were an official, or you had to get a proper warrant. And we don't have that circumstance now. And for reasons I'll go into in a second, that sort of a problem. We really ought to be back in 1999 before we even attempt some of this stuff. Also, the ignorance is not just technical ignorance. It's very easy in an audience like this to imagine this ignorance as technical ignorance. You're talking about ministers who, broadly speaking, don't know one end of a machine from another, but they also are ministers that deal with terrorism who've never seen a terrorist. They've never dealt with a terrorist event. They are entirely in the hands of their officials, Charles Farr and others, who was a very good MI6 officer, I think he still isn't. They deal with people like that who can tell them anything, and they have to effectively believe it. And that's really a very serious problem, because when you combine that with the sort of fear that has afflicted Western society since 9/11, it makes it incredibly difficult for a minister to resist the "you knew what I knew" minister, and if you do that, I cannot guarantee the safety of the British public. These are real phrases from real conversations. They're not psalm-free exercises. This is what they actually say to the ministers. So it's really quite serious. And Julian's right. The government, Home Office, but not just the Home Office, has gone through a transition. When it came in, it had a safety 6 months. It did away with ID cards, rolled back various other authoritarian measures. Then it went through a sort of mediocre middle, and now it's into full Blair at the moment. It's with these sorts of ideas. And they even, and the Prime Minister included, do not understand the power of what they're talking about. He keeps going on about, well, we're not getting the context. Let me tell you a true story which can act as a parallel to this. You remember when Damien Green was arrested? Now the Minister for Immigration, but he was arrested for doing work, actually working under me as Secretary. He was arrested for getting information from a whistleblower. And the whistleblower was also arrested and was eventually arrested at 6 in the morning by the counter-terrorism police and was eventually sacked. Now, as well as that whistleblower, there were in the previous 2 years, there were 16 other whistleblowers. Now, if you had these arrangements in place, what would have happened? With a simple cross-referencing exercise, every single one of those 16 whistleblowers would have been found and at the very least fired, if not jailed. Thereafter, how many whistleblowers do we have in the country? Because they could do it to an MP, they could do it to any journalist. So one of the side effects of this proposal is there will not be another whistleblower in the country unless he is on career suicide. So that's a really very simple point. And think of something else. Then think about, okay, what do we do if we apply this to people like me, but more important than me, people like ministers? I wonder how many ministers would like to have their entire address record for every internet access, every email, every telephone call, all the telephone calls to Mr. Murdoch, all those things put in the public domain. It'd be an interesting test of how safe this policy is if we do that. So I was sitting when you were talking, thinking, actually, this has nothing to do with money. This is absolutely nothing to do with money. I don't care if it costs cup and tape. I wouldn't want to do this because the costs are not financial. They are costs in terms of liberty. Also, understand that the ignorance does not just apply to ministers, it does not just apply to the ministers, it also applies to the technical experts. Because they think data mining is a productive and effective technique. And it's rubbish. If you go to, in its simplest terms, the problem of false positives. If you go to a doctor and have a test for some unpleasant disease, there's a chance you'll get the wrong answer. And you'll be rushing back to the penicillin or radiotherapy treatment, whatever it is, because the test has failed, not because you've got the illness. Well, if you don't think that's going to happen to people being surveyed under a massive database search program, then you've got nothing coming. I mean, for a start, who would Charles Carr start with? How about everybody who did Pakistan last year? Terrorists. Well, there's 900,000 for you for a start. You know? How about people who know terrorists? Well, you could add a few more thousands to that. Do you remember Forest Gate? Yeah? Somebody got shot in an operation which was on completely bogus information. There will be many, many, many more Forest Gates if we allowed this to go through as it is. And at this point, I'm going to part from Julian. I mean, he's right about most of what he said. In fact, and I have to say this to you, by the way, there is no dispute in Parliament by party about people who care about this. The only person in his party in government who has an honourable record, and this is managing the long government, is Chris Hoon. Everybody else has been lackadaisical or wrong. Probably the only person in my party who's got a sort of good record on it is Ken Clark, and he's got that one on something else. So the simple thing is there's no party issue here. This is an issue of poor government, ignorance, and fear. And I want to, on that point, to part from Julie, because I actually think that putting this into draft will not solve it, because it assumes a certain direction. We need to go in completely the opposite direction. We need actually to take back powers that were given in RIPA in a big way. We need to take back all the unwarranted oversight powers, all of them. Leave none in place. Why? Because the government will say to you, and any government will say to you, that well, we got three oversight commissions over intelligence and surveillance and interception. They're known in the trades as three blind mice. They are useless. You look at the number of intrusions they've found. If you think that's all there have been in the last couple of decades, then you're touch gullible. So I would say here that this is an exercise which needs to be dealt with full on, not technical changes, needs to be resisted completely. Indeed, if the direction of it should be the other way. And I say that as somebody who cares a great deal about security in this country, and I actually resent slightly the information which we had actually, and Shanley's staff and staff of other NGOs on this had a really difficult time at one point when it was sort of alluded that everybody who was involved in this campaign was somehow a friend of Al-Qaeda, was somehow a dupe of the terrorists. The dupes in this are the people proposing this thing, because it will waste vast quantities of resources. Vast efforts will go into this, which should go into other areas. So I'll finish really on that, because it just seems to me that we have to take this really rather more sternly than we have been talking about so far, at least as far as I'm hearing. And it won't be straightforward, because people will say, well, you're just being lackadaisical, you're being accused us of being Luddites. We don't understand the problems. I will finish with one other point, and it's this. When I was a very young man, which is a long time ago, it's more than a couple of decades, the way of intercepting was a little man in a blue overall, went into your local exchange and put a few dot clips and wires in to link up your line to other people's, right? So today, and that was a self-limiting exercise. There's only so many times you can do that. The technology limited what you could do. The idea that today the technology is a problem with surveillance services is bonkers. It's actually the other way around. That actually what's possible here is massive hoovering up. And of course, ironically, given what you were just saying again, absolutely right about proxy servers and the like, is that the people they'll hoover up will be you and me. The people they won't hoover up will be the people who are sufficiently sophisticated to use other measures. And some of the measures you talked about Dropbox and using Google and so on, are already being used by already, right now. So there is a really, really serious problem there, that what the government's proposal will do is turn us all into a nation of suspects, at least all of us except those who are really guilty.